Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Tape. This episode is the first in a series that we are doing with two of the most knowledgeable and interesting mechanically minded engineers, tuners that I know of in Australia. The series is called Tech Talk. We are going to be chatting with Lachy from SRAM or PSI Cycling, and Mick Williams, the engineer and man behind WRP, and also an integral part of Trinity mountain bikes. This episode, we're going to kind of go through suspension and frame geometry, high pivot idlers, and a bunch of other cool stuff that we go off on some deep tangents and rabbit holes with. Each episode is kind of going to have their own little theme or something that we go along with just to keep everything direct, but we are taking listener questions and we'll answer a few of those every episode. Thanks to those that asked questions in the last episode, and you'll find out who kind of won a prize for the latest one. Before we move on to the podcast, though, let's talk about our sponsors. We've got Canyon Bicycles on board. They are the best bikes I have ridden for a very long time. The Spectral's super lightweight, loving the geometry, and as you'll hear in the podcast, I'm a fan of small bikes. So really, really happy on that bike and the service that Canyon give us. All the suspension on that bike is tuned by NSDynamics. Those guys are Australia's premium suspension servicing companies. They offer full custom tunes, regular servicing. The hyper performance tune will make your suspension feel better than new. They also offer products like Öhlins, DVO, and Forsprung. We've got Two Up Bike Co. that keep all my chains lubed. Their line of Demonte Tech lubes and greases are perfect for everything I do on bikes, including in my home workshop. Absolutely love it. And I'm still on those factor pedals that those guys do. So much grip you think you're on clips. FE Sports have come along and helped out the podcast. Over the last few weeks, I have been running the Pirelli tyres, the Scorpions. Absolutely loving the traction those guys are giving me, and I can't wait to spend more time on those tyres and give you guys an honest review in the next couple of weeks. Franked Apparel, those guys have been keeping me kitted up for the last couple of months. Absolutely loving their lightweight tech that they're using in all their materials. You'd think this stuff's going to rip at the drop of a pin, but I did a solid belly slide, scratched a nipple to shreds, but the material was still good. So, tougher than skin, but light as anything. Loving it. To keep the mud off my face, I have Dirt Surfer mud guards. Those guys are killing it with all their custom designs. If you want a custom design for you, hit up Alan at Dirt Surfer and you'll get it sorted. And then post-ride, obviously using Crush to keep everything clean. Use Beyond the Tape at any of those websites, any of those stores, and get 10 to 15% off of any of those rad products. Remember, if you're supporting the supporters, you're supporting the podcast, and we can keep this thing running. It's coming up on 1.5 years. I don't even know anymore, but it's going strong, and it's all because of you guys. Don't forget to share it with your mates and everyone else that wants a bit of a listen as well. Now, with Tech Talk, we figured it would be good to have someone else come on board and support this podcast series as a title sponsor. Thankfully, the guys at Lead Out Sport have come across and offered their services. They are one of Australia's only tool-centric distributors in Australia. They are killing it. So they do things like Abbey Bike Tools, Smooth Lube, Efficient Velo, Pedro's. They are killing it. And for these episodes, for every one that enters, we're going to pick out one of the best questions. If your question is the chosen one for each podcast, then you'll be winning a $100 voucher for Lead Out Sports to get some Pedro's kit. Pedro's tools are absolutely amazing, and I've used them before and love them. So for those looking to get their hands on some sweet tools, ask some good questions. We've got a good winner in this one, and he asked a killer question, so it was really cool. But yeah, they are one of the best bike fixing tool specialists in Australia. So Lead Out Sports, thanks so much for this. Thanks for getting Pedro's on board. And yeah, can't wait to see yellow on some more tool walls. Now, let's move on to the podcast. As usual, grab a beer, grab water, grab a wine, and enjoy, because there is some good information in this one. welcome to the podcast. It's Tech Talk, the first episode. You guys keen?
Oh, yeah.
Keen. Love a bit of tech.
This is Mick's baby. It's your idea from the other day.
No, wow. We'll go back a step. You hit me up asking what would be cool for the podcast. I'm like, geez, dude, I don't know. And I was on the couch, like I was in the middle of doing a cat design, actually. I was on the couch, like, I don't know, dude. Like, kind of, to be honest with you, I half dismissed the message. And then I reckon I'd been talking to Lachy only like a day or so before about a STEM idea. And then I said, oh, a tech talk would be sick. You should try to get someone like Lachy. And then you came back to me and go, you and Lachy are on a tech talk. I'm like, fuck, I didn't really want to be on one of these.
Nice.
That's how it'll work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now I've put myself right in the firing line to say something stupid regarding tech. But
That's all right. It's good. I found like these 3 people kind of episodes have been really popular, like Giant Baxter and stuff. It's good. And
yeah, I guess you can cover a lot of content pretty efficiently, hey?
yeah. And kind of got the idea from that. After you said it, I was like, oh, cycling tips. Like they do that with Rome and a few other guys, and it seems pretty sick. So
Dave Rome actually replied to it saying sick, so that's pretty cool in my book. That was a big tick. So
First time I met Dave Rome was the other week at Handmade Bike Show. And yeah, he's a pretty cool dude.
he's the man.
He's helped us a lot. Yeah.
yeah. Owns a tool or two, apparently. Like has 1 or 2 tools. It's ridiculous.
It's awesome. It's amazing, and I have been slightly down that rabbit hole, and I'm nowhere close to that. And yeah, I'm just sure it would cost a lot.
I did like that he put one up last night of his new Nipex pipe cutter. Looks pretty sweet.
I do want to buy one of those now, actually. Yeah.
Love a good pipe cutter.
Yeah. Mine's not great, so yeah.
Well, it's always like you end up, well, I've found anyway, it's so easy to just fucking go to Bunnings or something to buy a pipe cutter for a bike, and it's like a pipe cutter. Whereas his was like this neat little, little pipe cutter for kind of perfect for seat posts and bars and stuff. So.
Yeah, it looks sick.
I'll never forget when I was a kid, I was like, Dad, can you cut down my bars? He's like gone to the shed and got like pipe cutter for like 4-inch round pipe. He's like, yeah, this will do. Jesus.
Just bends them in the process. Do you want to give us a little bit, enough about Dave Rome, do you want to give us a bit of an intro into who you are? So we've got Lachy and Mick. Lachy, did you want to go first?
Yeah.
Let us know who you are.
I'm Lachy. My last day of working at SRAM is tomorrow, actually, so I'm no longer the SRAM guy, but I'm working for PSI, which is the distributor for SRAM, so I'm still very much a SRAMmy. I fix things at events for people, and I try to ride a bike, and my job that I've got now as of one more day has been training mechanics on how to fix and service SRAM stuff, so
sick.
Kind of the gist.
Now you're going full marketing executive, I believe.
Full marketing executive, yeah.
And how about you, Mick? For those who don't know, who are you and what are you going to do?
I own WRP, which is Williams Racing Products for anyone that doesn't know the acronym. I'm a bit of a bike rider at heart. Kind of been taken, well, up until 2019, sort of taken racing sort of pretty seriously as well. Thanks for having me on, Darren.
It's all right. No worries. Thanks for the idea.
You better put that intro in this podcast.
Yeah, I'm just going to cut it to make it all sound like it was your idea.
Yeah.
It started with 15 tequilas. And
yeah. Gin and tonics.
Gin and tonics, sorry. Yeah,
Clean living.
Clean living.
Sick. For this first one, I think we wanted to go down the route a bit about suspension and stuff. Mainly, I figured it would be a good idea because obviously Trinity are doing that high pivot, high track system.
Hang on, I want to see, where is it? Can you see it over there? Is that the right way? I don't know. He probably couldn't see it. Did I go the wrong way?
I can see some. I can see some boxes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got the Trinity with the high pivot.
Mm.
And then Cannondale, which is a part of PSI, has got their new high pivot out. And we've seen Forbidden, Trek have got a high pivot. Norco. Yeah, I don't know who hasn't got a high pivot now. Seems like it's a bit
Well,
crazy.
there would be a lot of brands that don't, that are most likely have some type of high pivot.
GT's got one now too. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yep.
Comments are obviously the number one.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You even forget about it.
For sure.
I guess we'll start with you, Mick, and your kind of ideas about it. But why did Trinity kind of go down that route, and what's your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess to step back just from a mechanical point of view, like I've ridden a Supreme now since 2018 was the first Supreme that I had, like high pivot, obviously. So outside of just a mechanical standpoint, from a riding standpoint, like the first time I jumped on one, I was like, these are pretty good for going fast, like through rough stuff. That was unlike anything I'd kind of ridden before. And there's certainly been brands that did high pivot a long time ago, kind of late 90s even. But of the modern era, Common Style Supreme was probably the one that did it sort of best. But onto the Trinity one, I think firstly, I'll say that Chase, the industrial designer who's part of Trinity in California, he did the original design for Trinity. So I didn't come up with the concept of the high pivot for the Trinity. Like that was kind of the design concept when I came on board with it already. But certainly the reason why we kept the high pivot was for the reasons that, reasons being that, around the high pivot whole thing, which I'm happy to kind of go into, and that is basically rearward axle path is just so good on the rough stuff. Obviously, the high pivot and the high idler are two sort of separate things, but they're used in conjunction with each other to make the high pivot work. Because if you didn't have a high idler with your high pivot, you would just snap your chain because you've got so much sort of chain growth there. And then by having the high idler to avoid the chain growth, like the chain snapping, obviously then means that you don't get so much pedal feedback. So it kind of all goes into one. But the majority of the time, why you saw it on all the downhill bikes to start with, I guess, is that it's hard to tune a high a high pivot with also having really good pedaling efficiency. So that's why a lot of the downhill bikes and whatever have had predominantly high pivots. So why I think you're starting to see them coming in now is because there's been so much development over the last couple of years around geometry and ergonomics and whatever and around bike design to actually kind of make it work. We put a lot of, from sort of first-hand knowledge, we put a lot of work into, and Chase put a shitload of work into Trinity, into developing a system that would make a high pivot actually pedal well, mainly to do with anti-squat numbers and all that type of stuff. I think that's why they're starting to come in now, because the industry's kind of cracked how to do it. And obviously, enduro bikes are getting really big in travel too. Because, a lot that dictates your anti-squat figures and whatever is the reaction that the chain has as it moves through its travel. And obviously with a high idler, you're reducing the fact that you're reducing your kickback. So you're reducing the effect that your chain has on the suspension moving. So on your Supreme, say, it'll plow through all the real gnarly shit, but it'll pedal terribly. Try to pedal the Supreme up the hill and it's you just get off and walk. So it's that total sort of total kind of trade-off to make them both work. And that's where, say, with Trinity, the iTrack has kind of really come into its own with designing a system around we've got sort of really high anti-squat figures through the whole amount of travel, but still have it a bit of a plow eater. You won't feel that through your feet. So I hope I explained that somewhat concisely. But yeah, the big thing with a high pivot, let alone the high idler, but the high pivot is to have that rearward axle path to just deflect over all the roots and rocks. So your attack angle's less acute, I guess.
Yeah. And Lachy, you've been on like the opposite of high idler bike for a long time now. Yeah. Like I couldn't put more of an opposite bike than Maestro probably, because it is probably the best pedaling bike, but like sharp edges on those bikes don't get absorbed as much. Like you have to do a lot of tuning, I found, to get them right.
Which is funny because I've been tuning mine a lot and it's way better, but now it doesn't pedal as well. It's a fine line, right? Like the bikes I'm on now.
It's a double-edged sword, eh?
Yeah, like it's a 130 mil bike, so I probably don't completely need the rearward axle path, but like it makes sense. All of the high pivots make sense in the way that you're riding forward. You prefer to take that impact from front on as opposed to just going vertically up. So it definitely makes a lot of sense. Like it's interesting now, more and more bikes are doing it, and I wonder if shocks come into play slightly with that too. Downhill's always sold enduro products, and you've seen that from the original Pike when they went to black anodized tubes, and the Boxer, was the proto for that. So it's interesting to see. It's good to see proper numbers coming through with it. And it's obviously something I think is here to stay. Like there's been iterations throughout the past that have been around, like Zerodes and a bunch of German brands and stuff. But this is probably the first time I think they're really going to stay and actually get figured more. You know what I mean? So
for sure, there's a lot of figuring out that. Yeah, and I think that's sort of where I was heading to with I think the brands are starting to kind of figure out how you make a high pivot bike also pedal well.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, you go, Lachy.
No, I was saying I think that climbing position's changed a lot now too. I think that benefits it, and that climbing is probably built a lot around dropper post really, and having a lot higher dropper post too. So you're in this kind of just upright position sitting, which is definitely a different climbing mode than, riding your come and sail up the hill, you know what I mean, where you're actively bobbing that suspension as well.
Yeah, I am a high pivot fan for big travel, sort of like downhill type riding, like real aggressive enduro. But at the same time, I'll jump in and kind of play the devil's advocate here, is that they're not always better. That's the other thing, is that a high pivot bike can be a pig to turn, and it can be a pig to jump. If I wasn't racing, I would probably not have one, to be honest. If I was just riding park, I wouldn't have one, because it's really funny because as you go through your suspension, the rear wheel's moving backwards and the rear wheel's moving backwards and your front wheel's moving backwards. So if you were to stay purely static on the bike, effectively your center of mass is moving forward. So it feels a little bit weird. I remember the first time that I got my first Supreme, I actually kind of struggled to turn it, because when you sort of laid it in, if you're really compressed in a corner, to stay centralized on the bike, you were almost having to move backwards, which kind of felt real weird, because it was growing. So it's an adaptability thing. You adapt to the bike, of course, but there are sort of disadvantages to the system too. If you just wanted to rail slalom corners, a rearward axle path isn't going to be good at all. You want to be able to weight that front wheel real good. And then they do feel a little bit weird jumping too. That's why the common sail guys, all the free ride guys, are on the Furious, not the Supreme.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was on the Craftworks, which runs the same suspension design as you guys, or very similar. I think you guys use a bit more of a horse link, whereas this was the original HVP, high virtual pivot, that the market just kind of glossed over. But we won't go down that path. And then I wrote, so you have to, I couldn't work out why I kept losing, why I kept pitching forward in corners and stuff. And it was the exact same thing. It's your bike almost goes backwards underneath you.
It does, yeah, for sure.
But then like in the rough stuff, you just push down more and the bike got more stable. But then if you want to change direction, you just lighten the bike up and it got smaller. So you could shorter wheelbase. And then I went to a giant and I nearly died in the first few rides because it was the complete opposite. Like you just got to really force that bike down to get any grip and stability.
I think
so
it's all a double-edged sword, eh? And I think like for one, it depends on what you're riding and like what you're doing and whatever, but it also depends on also just how you adjust your riding to it. Like I had a giant rein and I loved it. Like it pedaled so good. And for like, I'm not going to go bomb bright as fast as I would on my Supreme, but for like all the local riding I did, it was rad. Like it was real good. So I think it's just a bit of a compromise. It's always a compromise. Like, well, the other thing, and like I don't think it's huge, but like a high idler is going to have more resistance too. So I'd be really surprised. Like obviously, like there are advantages and disadvantages that are going to make themselves up over a whole race weekend. But no one that I know of anyway has ever done like a full like quantitative testing on how much extra watts it takes, like over an 8-hour enduro, how much extra watts it takes to pedal a high pivot just because you're pedaling through an extra cog and bearing. I don't know what it is. Like it would be tiny, but it's still going to be there. Because I remember that was like the first thing. Can't even remember who it was now. Like Mountain Bike Action Mag or whatever. Like when they first brought out the very first Common Soul Supreme, like the V4, like the original V4, was that they were saying like the idler position was just a little bit off in the way that like if you're in top gear, the angle of the chain was acute enough onto the idler that it would cause a fair bit of friction and you could notice it when you pedaled. Because obviously your idler is very small and it's not narrow wide or anything. The position that it hit the idler was enough to kind of bind a little bit. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I definitely noticed something like Crafty because it was designed around 11 speed originally.
So was it in top gear that you noticed that it was a bit?
Yeah, because I had 12 speed on it. And it would, in the easier gears, it would just, you could feel it and hear it binding. Like
so I was getting told also that was a similar type of complaint was with the new Cannondale as well. But interesting.
Hey. Yeah.
I think it's going to happen with all.
Yeah.
It's still going to happen with your normal chainring though. You just can't hear it. Right?
Yeah. Well, like it's feeding through this. So I'm putting a power meter on mine because I can't ride without power now because I'm spoiled. But there's heaps of stuff I do best with that in terms of where I normally ride. But yeah, like the thing is, I'm pretty sure at least the ones I've seen were an alloy wheel, right? So you're going to be wearing through another pulley. So like there is going to be that. And then as Mick's saying, it's like, what's the trade-off between reducing your fatigue from riding watts-wise versus fatigue you'll save from, lack of pedal kickback and the bike performing. So it's
very interesting
one. Yeah.
For sure.
Isn't that why jockey wheels are plastic or that polyurethane? It's because they're
the better ones, and that was a cycling tips thing I'm pretty sure I listened to. They were saying, there was less friction on those plastic wheels than there were on the alloy ones.
Because you can, like, the alloy ones on, like, I don't know if you use those, like, alloy jockey wheels.
Yeah.
They are horrendous for, like, chain wear, and you can hear them, like, grinding because they don't bend.
Yeah, the alloy wears, whereas the plastic flexes.
Yeah.
I think was the basic principle with it. So, I think that's going to be the interesting side. Like, I'm very pedal focused, so I think that'll be. I've never ridden a high pivot enduro bike. I've ridden some downhill bikes.
Yeah, okay.
I think it will be quite interesting to see how that performs. I think the benefits of the suspension should outweigh the pedaling for the most part.
Yeah, and that's that's the other thing as well, is that even enduro is, like enduro at an EWS level too, a lot of those guys can smash the climbs pretty easy. And obviously the climbs aren't timed. You just got to make it in a split. So it's like the climb doesn't really matter. Like if you're fit enough to make it within the split easy, or then what's an extra little bit of effort taken to get to the top if it's going to mean a few seconds on the downhill. It's a good trade-off. But yeah, it's certainly really interesting. It's kind of a bit of a rabbit hole, I guess, but I think like in generic kind of riding, I think so many people are oversprung.
Yeah.
You know, like if I was just riding my local trails, I wouldn't have a hype of it. Well, I don't.
Okay.
Like, you know, I've got a common soul meta for my like daily driver, and like it's good. It pedals good. Like you were saying, Lachy, like I'm guessing yours is a trance. Like pedals super good.
Trans X's pedal's awesome. Like yeah. But yeah, and like that's that's a whole different conversation. But I'll have two mountain bikes because again precious. But I'll have more of that exceed focus trail bike, you know what I mean, for all of that stuff. And then I'll have the dedicated enduro bike, you know, and that's kind of the place it's going. But then I see like one of the guys at work, so he had an Aurum. That's his most favorite bike ever. It was, and he put a Meg on it. And I've never felt a bike so supple in its suspension and
a HSP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he now wants to get the new range. So it's like those bikes seem to now be replacing the downhill bike with the justification of you can do both, which is really, really interesting. Whereas before it was kind of like the other lower bikes could do both.
Yeah.
I think, it is very interesting. I think, I don't know. Even the bike park scene is changing a lot of things as well, because arguably a big enduro bike, like let's say a range with a triple clamp, like that would be an insane park bike, like for Queenstown or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's another dynamic too. You've got a lot of guys that had downhill bikes because that's what they use to park ride. Whereas it's like, hey, I can probably have way more fun on like a big enduro bike or whatever. But
I don't know what the scene is like for you guys in Melbourne, but here we have very, very little like gnarly, technical, rocky trails. Like
well, you've got more gnarly stuff than what I'm down on the coast. I'm not really in Melbourne. You guys in Adelaide have way more gnarlier stuff than I have here even. So,
but we don't need a downhill bike here. Like that range is the perfect bike to race downhill on here.
Yeah.
Like
that's it. That's
what I think will happen more is like people will like down here that the down country bikes getting popular, and then the downhill bikes like Red Hill Way where all the Groms are just shredding like they were on downhill bikes. I think now it'll just move to these more capable high pivot kind of bikes for everything that's a lesser travel that they can kind of do a bit of both because they're not getting driven up top of the hill. And then that short travel class, well, the pretty much short travel is like anything that doesn't have a triple clamp. That's huge now for the race scene here. So I think that'll just get bigger and bigger. And then as Bax has said in the past, you just kind of hope that the tracks don't get made for that. It gets made for downhill bikes, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. And I think that that is a good point, Lachy. I think it's so environmentally dependent as well. Like if you live in the Alps and you got a chairlift, like fuck downhill bike.
Sure.
Like you're never going to beat a downhill bike. But if I was doing no racing, I wouldn't own a downhill bike.
Yeah. I'm going to piss a lot of people off and say, but like Adelaide doesn't build good trails. Like we get blue trails.
Oh, I reckon you build better. You build better stuff than what's down here.
Dude, I was there like a month ago and we did 70 Ks and it was rad. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't all downhill tracks or anything, but like there's some pretty good stuff there, man. I was impressed. Yeah,
I'm going to stick up to Adelaide as well. I'm going to say it's pretty good.
Stop hating on Adelaide, mate.
But those trails you rode were old school trails, if I remember correct.
Probably, yeah.
It's all close too. That's what's so good about Adelaide. It's so close, man.
Yeah.
Again, why you don't need a downhill bike here? Like you just go and pedal.
Who needs a downhill bike in Australia, really? Like Mick and you guys are ridden overseas. You need a downhill bike over there. For some tracks. I don't think you need a downhill bike in Australia. Like people probably hate me saying that, but like, that 7-inch bike, like that's like when Specialized had that Enduro SX and stuff, like I've tested one of those, like that travel range is perfect. You know, and if you can get the benefits out of what the big boys are running with that high idler and rear axle path, then you know maybe there'll be less and less downhill bikes. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna like jump in there kind of on that point, Lachy. Is like what's really funny is because of just back to the high pivot and high idler kind of combination, is that what's really funny is I think that like a 170 mil high pivot will literally deflect over stuff as good as a 200 mil standard suspension.
100%.
It's like,
is that the thing? Have people been buying downhill bikes with more travel mainly because of the angles and that performance of the extra travel? And now will this design be better with less travel, which is what your bike sounds like it is, you know what I mean?
yeah, perhaps. Like we've got this, not to pump up the Trinity or whatever, but currently, like we've got it set. This one is designed to be a 170 mil with a 65 stroke, but it's got a stroke reducer in it, so it's only 62.5 mil. So, it's under that 170, and it feels like it's got a lot of travel. Like I rode it back to back with my Supreme, and you couldn't really, and it's a high pivot, and yeah, you couldn't really tell that it wasn't a 200, which is pretty insane. My point being is like my Meta is a 140 mil, just standard 4-bar, and like you can tell it's a 140, like it's rad, but you can tell it's 140, and you know by rights that the Trinity should be right in the middle between my Meta and the Supreme, and I'm telling you it's like 95% the Supreme. It's it's nowhere near right in the middle. So yeah, I think that the high pivot, that's where it'll come in a lot too. It's like you can build a shorter travel bike that compared to a traditional design feels like it's got a third extra amount of travel just because it deflects over stuff so much better.
How much rearward travel's yours got? Because I know the Craftworks had 50 mil, like it was something ridiculous.
That's a lot. Yeah, I think ours, I'd have to have a look at the chart. I think it's like 34 mil.
Yeah. So if you have 170 mil of upwards travel and then 34 mil of rearwards travel, is that increasing the overall travel of that wheel?
Mm-hmm. It is.
So that's why it feels bigger?
Yeah. For that, like if you drew a line, vertically compared to a horizontal, like it's going to have effectively a tiny bit more travel, but I think it's more so that it's deflecting off stuff more.
Yeah.
So the point is, because it's deflecting off stuff more, it doesn't get so choked up in its travel as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the best bit of the travel, right? Is when it starts to go back. So you're just getting more of that.
That's right.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Better. Yeah.
And that's exactly right. Like if you can stay in that first kind of 30% of your sag line, so it's like a trophy truck when they're pinning across dunes or whatever, and the wheel's just fluttering underneath it.
Yeah.
If you can maintain something like that, so it's just sitting in the first part of the travel without ever getting choked up, then yeah, that's real cool. And I think the backwards deflection over stuff helps it returning again without kind of janking you.
And have you noticed, like, with shock tuning that anything's changed, Lachy? Have you had much to kind of do with the tuning on these bikes, or?
Not on high pivot, to be honest. And I've only really been dabbling in the tuning stuff for like a month at home. It does make a big difference, but it doesn't make a big difference, I think, in the way people think it does. I think people get really strung up on like wanting a custom tune. And I don't think that's actually what they want. But it makes a huge difference. Like I went from, so I've got a mid in the Trans X, which no complaints with it, but I was like, I'm just going to chuck in an LL. And so that's going from a mid compression and rebound to a low. So faster rebound, less compression. And it was crazy. Like first run, just couldn't jump off stuff the way I would before because it would sit in the suspension more. which was pretty crazy. And then rebound was quite different, and so much so I had to kind of change the tokens and the main pressure because it's got a meg. But then it was interesting to read with the Cannondale on the pink bike review. They were saying that like the compression tune was off, and that was an MM. And I would assume you'd want a low compression rate, and then that bike was designed from the downhill program with the twin shock. I kind of thought that would have been dialed, so I'm not sure like if it was a different shock or what's going on, but obviously it's going to make a big difference, and I think it would make more of a difference on that bike than it would on a standard pivot where it goes back into the bike, because it's really going to feel different for any high-speed compression movement in the way it moves backwards. So, I don't know. Like, I'm keen to play with it more. I've got 2 shocks for the Cannondale to test. I got a Coil and an Air. The Air's got a L1 compression tune, which is like the second lowest, and an L rebound. And then the Coil shock, I put in an LL in that. So, yeah, interesting. So lower than what the bike came with on the pink bike review. So
that essentially means that wheel's going to be more active and easier. Well, the suspension is going to be more active and easier to get out. It should be more
active in both its moving into the travel as well as moving back, and the moving back affects the moving in. So, yeah. I would feel you'd want that pretty open, but I don't know. Like, you may be able to speak to it more, Mick.
Yeah, I think like it comes down to so much about how they've designed their linkage system to like you've got to look at the leverage ratios so much. Like I think like I'll say now, like I'm not an expert at tuning a shock. I've never tuned a shock in my life. And anything that I've raced on has been a standard tune too. I've just mucked around with the clickers. So yeah, I'm not gonna delve into the internals of it, so to say. But with designing the Trinity and kind of riding a lot of high pivots as well, it's got so much to do with the linkage system and how your leverage ratio is working. Like Chris from EXT has put a custom tune in the EXT story that we've got in the Trinity. I don't know what he's done. It feels really, really good. I can't tell you what type of tune he's got in it. Should have probably asked him before this, but going back to what you were saying, Lachy, on my Supreme before this one, they were running like Vivids, so you had high and low speed compression, and I ran the high speed just all the way open and just controlled anything like track dependent with my low speed. The current Super Deluxe I've got in has just got low speed compression and rebound, so it's a little bit less, but for that bike I just felt like, because it was such a sort of a chatter eater, you could just wind the the high speed just off and just let it eat. But yeah, other than that, like I guess my main thing is it depends so much on how the linkage system has been designed from factory, and how the leverage range and all that kind of works. Like, yeah, it's kind of funny, and that kind of dictates as well, I think, so much as to whether you want to run coil or air as well. Like the coil or air sort of debate is so like, it's nothing against Pink Bike, but they posted something the other day and I was just like, smack my head, because I'm like, the coil versus air argument is just so wide open, because it depends so much on how the frame company has designed their leverage ratio. So wide open.
And I think that's like, this is going to go into the weeds, but like I've said this heaps, like, and I say it with Stu, like everyone's like, oh, can I run coil? Can I run this? Like, just run what the manufacturer recommends. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but they've spent a lot of time designing that bike or whatever around that. I think that you should just run what they say, you know what I mean? Or
unless there's a really well-developed race program around that, you know, which is largely going to be backed by the manufacturer anyway.
you know, like I had someone talk to me the other day about a Trek and running on a coil, and I was like, well, I've run those in the past. They don't normally suit coils very well. Should probably run air. And the dude's like, lovely to chat to him a bit. He's like, oh yeah, just, you know, it just bottomed out real quick. And I was like, well, that's inherently the design of coil if the bike's designed around an air shock, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a whole nother debate we can have.
It is a whole nother dimension. And like, I think what I don't know, I wouldn't say it's misleading. I guess it's misleading by interpretation. But of course, like guys that are going to Rampage and whatever and putting like 750 pound springs in or like insane PSI into there. And I guess you've got local guys saying, oh, I need an air because Cam Zink just ran an air in Rampage. It's like, well, yeah, it's because he's hucking 50-foot drop. Like,
hey, I ride like Cam Zink. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's super funny, but
well,
yeah, like, it depends so much. Like you were saying, Lachy, like it depends so much on how the bike has been designed for within certain boundaries. And like there are guys that are going to be running it out of spec because they're doing out of spec shit, like hucking a 50-foot drop. But yeah, they're doing out of spec shit. So if you're doing the in spec stuff, then you'll be probably pretty good.
Yeah, and like especially at SAG, like air and coil can be quite different, especially in that mid-stroke kind of range.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the whole pedal design of a bike's based around 30%-ish, you know what I mean? Whatever your SAG number is, which is where you ride the bike the majority of the time. So I feel even in those ranges of travel, it still is going to make a difference in how that bike sits, you know what I mean? Just in the spring.
Well, and you can probably talk to this more than I can, Lachy, but what I think is the majority of the problem with most people that complain about their suspension, like, oh, I need an air because it's not doing this, probably is because their suspension isn't serviced.
Probably, yeah.
You go get it serviced, it's going to feel magic.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, man. Like, I don't really ever have too many people complaining about suspension, to be honest, but the under-servicing thing is crazy. And again, this is getting in the weeds, but like, yeah, if you want your bike to work properly and you're going to go to races, I just get your stuff serviced, and you can do it at home. It makes a huge difference. Like, you know, especially in the air spring. Like, it could just be the air spring. It might not be the damper.
Yeah, it's something that I've come to like do recently, like the last little bit, is because it's so easy to get bad at servicing your stuff, like particularly suspension. Like, it's so easy to rack up a heap of hours of riding and not service it, and particularly like blasting it with the gurney, stuff like that. Like, it's so easy to rack up riding hours on your stuff and not get the suspension service. But it's so true, and like I need to remind myself frequently, like, get your shit serviced, because it just makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
it's like, I'll wrap around like everything that was just said, but like again on that Craftworks, I ran an air and then I ran a coil. The suspension linkage, like the leverage rate, was designed around an air to make it feel as linear as possible. But because of the seal drag, like the extra stiction that you get in some air shocks, especially the older Monarchs, it just didn't feel as supple off the top, whereas that coil did, but then it would bottom out more frequently. So you just I couldn't find like a happy place. I went with the coil and oversprung the shit out of it, and it was fine. But having those two, like, both shocks were okay, but the kinematics made everything. Like, and I don't know how many people know how to look at a kinematic chart and go, oh, the bike does this because of this. Like, there's not enough talk around that. There's more about those products of air and
well, I think the other thing that is misleading also is when you've got companies, and like, dare I say, Commensal is one, like with their Supremes, in like a lot to do with their Supremes. Like, they have two different specs. Like, it's spec'd with a coil and an air, and the customer's got to be asking, like, what the fuck's going on? Like, which one's better? Like, and like, that's a fair thing to say too. Like, I've always ridden my Supremes with a coil. There are other guys that swear by air. Like, I've never tried it with an air. I'd love to actually try it, because like Medina being one, I actually felt like I needed more ramp, and I was trying to track down a heavier spring and couldn't get one. But if I had got a heavier spring, like it wouldn't have handled the chatter better. I was like, shit, if I actually had an air, I'd try it. Just to handle, because like I felt as though Medina, I wanted something that was really progressive because it had quite a few holes in that.
Yeah.
But back to the point, yeah, I think that can be very misleading to the consumer is when, things are spec'd with, two varieties.
Yeah. No, like, and that's, some bikes can do both as well.
For sure.
And, yeah, like just with the ramp thing, I'm sorry, I'm product plugging stuff and just grabbing stuff down, but like there is more tunability with air, obviously. And when you go with something with like the Magneg, like you can get pretty close to like a coil feel out of that, but then at the same time you can make it ramp up hugely as well. So I think air shocks will be more commonplace, I feel.
Yeah.
Because you can control both. Well, you can have your cake and eat it. You can get the sag and you can get the bottom out. What you're saying with your coil spring is like Darren is like you've oversprung it, which helped with the bottom out, but you've lost all the traction and control.
Yeah, exactly.
That you're going to get. You know what I mean? So you get your cake and eat it. So I would be surprised either designers are going to get those coil shocks dialed where it's got enough progression to allow it to not bottom out harshly, or they're going to go air, you know what I mean? But then you also see the bottom out bumpers getting bigger. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, and then to add it, I was just going to say, to add a whole nother span of the works is the progressive coils.
Yeah. Which I don't believe in, to be honest. Like
I've never ridden one, so I really can't. Yeah.
Like I have ridden them in the forks before, and it is a bit of a weird feeling. Like I think in essence,
I made my own for a set of forks.
Yeah, some springs up.
Yeah.
Just out of the Corolla.
In theory, especially in like motorsport, right, where the vehicle's the mass, in that the spring in most cases should hopefully move from one end to the other first. Okay, I think the reason in bikes I don't feel great is I don't think that spring always moves from one end to the other first. So you're not getting the coils to bind. It may move in different parts of the spring all at once, as opposed to just going from the softest to the hardest. Whereas air will have to do that because it's compressing a volume of something. That's why I feel I don't get the full feeling of air shock. But then two, you're still limited on the bottom out. Like it would still be limited to not a doubling of pressure of air. It's going to be limited at a certain poundage that usually isn't extreme. It's just a little range, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, I think that the other thing that I kind of, again, like I'm not a suspension internals expert, but I think there's also a lot of scope with air too. Like I feel as though a lot of the manufacturers, particularly in the bike industry, have really scratched the surface of what's possible with air springs as well. Like there's a lot of, like I'm sure you guys probably read the Pink Bike article of carbon air and that type of stuff, where they reckon they can get more air volume by putting like carbon cartridge in because it holds more air molecules and stuff.
Okay.
So you can basically change the volume of your air chamber without having a bigger chamber per se, like having more of this carbon air in there, which is like super interesting because basically you can change your volume size just by inserting or swapping inserts, which when I read I was like, really? Like doesn't seem, it's counterintuitive, but trust the maths, I guess. But the broader picture is I think that a lot of manufacturers really haven't scratched the surface with what's possible with air either because like you were saying, Lachy, like it's so tunable, and particularly if you want to go down the track of like electronic suspension and all that type of stuff, I think the only way to really do it is with an air spring.
I think air's the future. I think air is much like high pivots, really, like now that's what's getting focused on, I think, more. And there's more bikes with it. Whereas before, the air shock was just the little XC shock, you know what I mean?
For sure.
It was lightweight. And it's the same with the high pivot was always a downhill bike, you know what I mean? So I think seeing it on more things makes it more tunable. I think that's why the Megnegs a thing. Like, that is an awesome product. It's just confusing to people. Like,
yeah, for sure. Like most people that are serious about racing or whatever that run air will have a Megneg.
yeah.
And like, to sort of broaden the topic a little bit, it's even like what race was it? Like San Diego, whatever. Like Eli Tomac was running an air shock in Supercross.
Yeah.
And he won too, and everyone was like, holy fuck, like that thing is working so good. Like I saw it, like I'm not a huge moto head, but I saw like a snippet out of him like doing this rhythm section, and I think it had kind of some whoops in the middle or at the end or whatever, and like it was tracking so good, and he had it like, you know, whatever they've done, I think they're with KYB, I think, but you know, obviously they've got the big development money and whatever, but I guess a lot of people would have thought that like that type of technology in moto had kind of topped out as far as like suspension stuff, but sort of popping the can on air springs in moto, like in shocks, like they've come into forks obviously, but on shocks is like a whole nother realm. But yeah,
I mean, to wrap up that debate about coil and air though, but like I had to pay full price for something the other day at a shop for the first time in 7 years.
You must have annoyed them, yeah.
It was brutal, $35. It was crazy. Still recovering. But for me to tune an air shock is, what's a Megneg worth? Like $150?
Honestly, I have no idea. It sounds terrible. But yeah, let's say that.
Like $150, and then spacers are like $35.
Yeah.
Like you might be $200. The progressive coil from Race Only Springs is $350 AUD, I think.
You got to get that right.
Yeah, and you've got to get that right the first time. Like,
Yeah.
And it's not tunable. That's the thing. Like, it is what it is.
And my air shock has 350 different spring rates from 1 PSI. Well, actually, it's going to have, 3,500-ish plus, because it's got 0 PSI to 350 PSI. Whereas that spring rate's got maybe like 10 pounds roughly.
Yeah, it depends on what, like different companies. Some companies do 25 pounds. I think it's the lowest increments I've seen.
Yeah, Olin's does that, but like the actual adjustability of that spring with preload isn't much.
No, well, with preload, that's the other thing that sucks, right? So preload takes your breakaway up.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah.
Whereas with air, you can put the cartridge up, your breakaway is still 0.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think like for usability, like air is number one by far. Yeah. We also mentioned, like you mentioned about big travel enduro bikes and stuff like that. This is the other thing we're kind of going to talk about. But we saw Formula release dual crown enduro forks, and then I don't know
and
what
one of their riders, one of the orange guys, was on that this weekend as well.
Well, someone in the Masters at the last enduro won on it.
Oh, really?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I wasn't aware of that.
Ancelotti, I think, are running him.
Oh, yeah.
And then we saw Intend have a 1.5. I had 1.5.
Yeah.
Crown.
Yeah.
Maybe is it 2? I don't know how it is, because
it was like a lefty plus 1.
Yeah. You can do X ups one way but not the other.
Yeah. You just switch the fork around.
Yeah, you hope that the track had all right hand turns, or whichever. Yeah.
Tight ones,
Yeah.
And then we can go Canada.
Or it might be, if it was a tight one, you might have to do a 270.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah.
Like an alley-oop.
One of those enduro turns where they the trials turns. But then I forgot that, Cannondale has technically a single crown, but it's all on one side.
Yeah. Well, they're all kind of different, right? Like the Cannondale effectively is a inline shock kind of in a fork. Whereas the Formula and Intend are still both single-sided legs. You know what I mean? One's air and one's a damper. So they'll perform well. Like, I don't know, like Mick probably speak to the Formula one. Obviously, I'm a RockShox guy, so Sorry, but
I think when we were talking about this the other day, Lachy, I think I was under the same impression as you that the reason why Intend did it on theirs was just to have a really big air chamber.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So apparently it's to do with a real big negative.
Yes.
Which makes sense because if you have a big negative, you can pump up the main chamber to be quite big, and I think that makes sense. Like it speaks true to what a lot of the stuff RockShox's doing with a bigger negative.
Yep.
With the formula, like I have nothing against it. I've ridden a Formula fork before when I was working at A&B, and I wouldn't say it was a bad fork. Like it rode fine. But the dual crown thing, as you were saying, Mick, like I think in your little kind of note stuff is like, I would hate to be able to turn on that thing. Like I turn quite a lot.
Yeah, like depending on the track, like, and that's kind of thing. Like downhill, it's just pinned, and most of your turning is from a lean, not a turn. Like your turn kind of initiates the lean, but like you never really more than a degree or two.
Yeah.
Whereas like tight enduro, like some of the tracks down here that I sort of ride, like a lot of them are walking trails and whatever, so they've got like legit like 180 turns, like comes back on itself, and like you're on the point of oversteer, like you're doing like a Euro turn, and the point being is like a lot of EWS tracks are kind of like that, and I couldn't imagine trying to ride one on a Triple Crown fork. And I think the other argument from a lot of people is, like the Triple Crowns are stiffer, which they are, like they're a lot stiffer. But I think the stiffness argument like is a big debate too, because like a 20 mil axle is way stiffer than a 15 mil axle.
Yeah.
So it's like,
so it make a difference, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, well, a Triple Crown's like the Triple Crown's so much better because it's stiffer, like it's better than the 38, whatever. It's like, well, it's kind of a bit of a redundant argument because you could be like, well, why don't you make a 38 with a 20 mil then?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Or tall caps.
Well, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
If you go down like the stiffness route, I reckon those lefties are one of the stiffest forks I've ever ridden. Like those things are so stiff.
I think like just to wind back on this a little bit, like it's so much about marketing though. Like it's so much about
is it like
marketing?
I said this earlier, right? Like downhill bikes sell enduro stuff. I think. You know what I mean? Like that's, I still see that, and it's cliche now, but like that's the F1 of the sport. And I'm not saying enduro is not the F1, but it's the rally, you know what I mean, of it.
Yeah. I
think it sells those products. Like, yeah, like I don't know if I want a stiffer fork. I haven't ridden the Zeb yet. I've got one waiting here for my Cannondale. I don't know if, I'm pretty happy with the Lyric with torque caps. So I don't even know if I run torque caps on that thing because it might just be too stiff.
I think like yeah, you're right. Like, a friend of mine that I ride with, and like it's so funny, like he wanted one of the new metas just because it had the Zebs, and I'm like, dude, like it's not going to make that much of a difference. Like I run a set of Pikes on the front of my meta, and like don't get me wrong, if I had the choice I'd probably prefer a set of Lyrics, but like I really like the fact that they have a silver Pike, so I wanted to match it with a silver frame. And I also wanted to run it kind of steep, so I've got them set at like 140. So like that's fine for a Pike. But the point being is, like, dude, like the Zebs are massive. Like you're really not going to notice. But back to my point, did you see the other day that Boss have entered the fork game again? And
again, yeah.
And
we don't even have enough oil for the forks we've got now. He's going to be running 3 liters in those things.
Yeah, I've got a set of Boss forks, and yeah, you're right. But like an older pair. But it's super funny because obviously RockShox came out with a Zeb, then the Fox 38 came out, and then Boss came out with theirs with 39 mil stanchions. And it's like, this is a joke. Like, come on. Like, they've just gone 39 just to one up everyone.
Standard. It's, like, it's a conspiracy.
Well, also probably because there's no crossover of parts and stuff too, I'd say. But yeah, I don't know. I won't speak too much of Boss. I've ridden Boss stuff before, but I'm not going to say anything.
I I haven't ridden it.
Yep.
I've just picked it up and felt that it was like 4 kilos.
It's different. Like I've got a set
So
of
damped.
I've got a set on my dirt jumper that like I've slant there like a 170mm fork, and like I've put a heap of tokens like under the air shaft to reduce them down to 100. Backyard setup, but like they actually feel real good. But they are a pain in the ass to set up, because it's like, they're like the bandwidth of compression and rebound is like so broad.
Yeah.
Like you can have it super, like you were saying, Lachy, like super, super damped, where you're like, no one would ever run this nth degree of setup.
Yeah.
And then you can back it off to the point where it's like a pogo stick, and you're like, why would anyone run this? It's like, why don't you just narrow your bandwidth into a rideable zone and have like half a dozen clicks? But they're like, I'd have to go and count them, but like literally there's like 26 clicks or something. And then they've got high and low speed compression and rebound of like 26 clicks each.
Yeah.
It's like gnarly.
Sick.
Like I think
they cost so much.
more. Less is so much more, and like it's so like the Megneg thing, right? Like I love it, but you've got to spend like some time to set that thing up, and there's not even that many variables. It's like 5 bands you can put in the can, and like 4.5 tokens max in the main shock.
Yeah.
And that's too hard for people to figure out sometimes. You know what I mean? So like putting that other element of just the basic setup, like, whew.
Well, I'll do a little sponsor plug, but like the Olin's stuff that I've been like, I haven't got it now because I've been paying retail for stuff, but the coil I had on the Craftworks had 5 clicks of rebound.
Yeah.
Like it was noticeable clicks though, like too fast. Okay. Amazing shit.
Yeah.
But like you go to a Fox and it's 60,000 clicks, and only every second or third one makes a difference.
Yeah. It's like we've gone down to 8 clicks on rebound now. And like I was doing a stew with the new guy Zach at Shram this week, who's rad. But like it's 8 clicks and it makes a dramatic difference. You know what I mean? Like it's way easy to get dialed in. You're like, this one was good or this one was bad. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Were we going to jump in with Mick? You're going to be an advocate or something?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, Fox, like, needing tools to adjust clickers. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yes. Or you have to take that cap off at the bottom of the fork to get to the adjusters, and it's all muddy and fucked. Yeah. That's all right.
I don't know. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I've been I've always been an on-track tinkerer. Like, I'll get halfway through a run and be like, oh, I don't know, I'm just going to try like an extra 2 clicks of low speed, and I'll put 2. So I'm like mid-run, so it's kind of continuous. So I'll be able to tell straight away, because I always feel as though if I get to the bottom, adjust it, by the time I get back to the top, I'll kind of have forgotten what the bike feels like to a degree. So like I haven't ran Fox stuff personally, but like, I'm an on-track tinkerer for sure. So I'd hate to carry around tools in my pocket.
I'm the same, man. Like I was going to take a photo the other day, like my bike, like the knob, the anodizing coming off the low-speed compression dial, and it's probably from it touching like something. But like I just always use it. Like I always use it. I'm the same. I like to do it straight away to feel it. And if I'm doing a run and I know it feels crap, I don't want to finish that run with it feeling like crap just to change it later. I'll just change it now. Yeah.
I've even done it like on the fly, like sat down, reached down, and just done like a couple of clicks and not even stopped. But yeah.
And on setup and stuff, we're kind of talking about a little bit here. But you're talking about all those clicks and those knobs and stuff. But say for me, example, on my pikes, which I love, again, because they're less stiff than
I love pikes. They're good.
They're almost as good as my Olins. But they flex more than Lyrics and they flex more than Zebs. And that's why I like them, is they're similar to a high pivot because the wheel comes backwards a little bit. I know it seems counterintuitive, but it feels good. But if I'm at the max of those clicks, which I am for rebound, and I still want to play around with it, on a Charger 2.1 dampener, how does someone go about dealing with that? Like, can I just put, because I think it runs like a 5-weight oil. in there?
3-weight.
3-weight? Can I run a 5-weight? Or
No.
God damn it.
Honestly, like there's nothing you could do with that. But I would say, like, what pressure are you running it on?
A lot.
Do you know?
I think like it's been a while. 125 with 2.5 tokens.
Yeah, okay. And you're trying to slow. You're at the max of slow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to try it slower.
Yeah, okay. Like, there's not much you can do, to be honest. And no, I would not put a 5-weight oil in it. Like, but that pressure is not crazy high. Like, and it's only doing the rebound, like the low speed rebound. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
like that's pretty slow, man. I don't know.
It's not though.
I would like to look at your setup a bit more, and honestly, I think the air spring could maybe do with a bit more dialing in for that amount of like force in the spring. Just the thought. Yeah.
Interesting.
So like there's probably a custom route you could go, I suppose, like, which is not something I'm aware of. But there's probably not a lot you could do in that yourself. It's a pretty gnarly little shim stack in there that I just would not want to touch that thing. It's tiny and it's very cute.
No, that's what everyone's told me. It's like, do not touch that shim stack.
Yeah.
Could you, and I'm not a suspension tuning expert like you, Lachy, but
I'm not an expert, but yeah.
But you're saying the rebound's too fast. So could you perhaps go down in pressure so it's not going to want to come out so fast, but put more tokens in?
That's what I would.
So go up to like 5 tokens and drop your PSI by like 20.
Then it gets spiky.
But it shouldn't get spiky because the pressure's less. 5's a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly right. 5's a lot. I know. I'm just saying, like, to an nth degree, but like that's what I would try personally. Because
maybe I'll go to
I like slow rebound too. I'm on like 6 clicks from slowest.
Wow.
Generally, I'm like 6 to 8 from slowest.
Yeah.
But I run a lot of tokens as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's where I notice the rebound is because you get that spike at the end of the spring and the rebound gets faster, right? Because the spring is putting more force back.
It's true, but like the higher pressure you've got, the more it's going to want to spring back faster as well. So by putting tokens in, you can reduce the pressure. So like everything's a double-edged sword, I know, but yeah, without really knowing, it's something that you could try.
Like if your pressure was up way more than that, like that would be a different kettle of fish. But that pressure is not crazy high. Where I'd feel that. And again, like you're probably actually feeling the high speed rebound as a set stack as opposed to the low speed. It could also be that slow that you're feeling a kickback when it hits the low speed circuit, not when it's from being slow. When it's, if it was faster, you may actually get back into the travel, get into a smoother bit in the travel quicker.
Yeah.
Because that's really slow, man. So that's what I reckon would be happening. It's like you're getting rebounds somewhat travel dependent, but not ultimately at a certain position. But it's like you're coming back to the low speed point. Let's say you're at 70% of that travel, then it's going slow. You're still in a harsher part of the spring.
Yeah,
maybe where
exactly.
It's feeling harsh. If you speed that up, because it's just low speed, it may just start actually like the
sitting in the higher portion,
like, doing the skimming. Like that's you, and you can see it. Like if you sit on your shock or your fork tomorrow, Darren, and it will shock more than anything. Put it to full slow, sit on it at sag, and then adjust it when you're off the bike, and it just springs back.
Yeah.
So I reckon you might just be in a harsher part of the spring.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to play around with that.
I would speed that puppy up, man. Fast rebound's very in right now. Yeah.
Just ask Blinky.
Fast rebound for fast riders.
Exactly.
Blinky's spike looks so crazy.
Oh, man, he's so fast. But it's because he rides like that too. He's just like hanging off it.
Yeah.
He does so much. He pedals so much in the air. He uses the suspension travel while he's jumping. Obviously, my setup is a little bit off. Probably is a little bit off. What are you guys using for your suspension setting? Like, I think you mentioned you were going to start using a bit of telemetry with the
Trinity.
the Trinity. And
Yeah,
then,
for sure. I mean, we kind of have to. I mean, I think it's kind of. Sorry if I cut you off just then.
No.
I think, it's you kind of have to. I think if you're bringing a new bike to market and you don't have any data backing it, I think that's kind of trying to just jib people. Like, you got to kind of back up your claims.
Yeah.
So, we're definitely going to be using some telemetry for that.
Do you think it's worth the average consumer using? Like, SRAM's got ShockWiz, which is a fairly budget tool for.
Yeah, I think it depends on. I think it appeals to everyone. It just depends on what level. Like full telemetry systems, I don't think for the general person, but ShockWiz, absolutely.
Just to be sassy, and I'm quoting the Suspension Lab in New Zealand though. So telemetry is live tracking, what I understand. So you wouldn't be doing telemetry; would it be like data logging?
Yes, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, not to be sassy, but yes.
Yeah, no, yeah, yep, no, good.
Because I keep seeing telemetry everywhere, and I'm like, oh, I don't think that's right. But
It's definitely not. But I use that term because it is what everyone thinks it is. Data.
Yeah, it's like just phonetic. Yeah.
The ShockWiz, I think, is an awesome tool, and it was something I was skeptical of. And again, that comes with a bit of bias because I work for SRAM, right? But I think it's an excellent tool. I take that to new places when I go riding. I took my trance down to Medina last time instead of the rain, and had the best time ever. And I just took the ShockWiz, and the first half of the day, on the first day I was there, I just set it up and it was good to go. The thing that's interesting with the ShockWiz is it also measures your dynamic sag, which is what you're riding at. And that was what changes the most going from where I ride here to Medina, because I'm riding.
Is that
faster.
just because it's steeper?
It's steeper. I think the steepness, but also the velocity you're riding. Like you're riding at a faster speed and you're hitting stuff faster.
So did it tell you to put more air in?
Yeah, so I ended up going more air in the back, and I think I had an extra token as well.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. And then when
just
I came back
bigger
here,
hits, I guess.
it was noticeably stiff, and I went back to what it was before. So I think tools like that are underrated. I think with ShockWiz, everyone gets it and they think like, well, I'm not the average rider. But I think the wealth of knowledge in it's actually pretty good. Like,
they're pretty good.
It's handy, like, and especially going to new places. So many shops rent them. Just rent one for a week. You don't have to buy it.
Yeah.
But I think they're great. But it doesn't give you the analytics. Like, it doesn't give you the data logging stuff that what Mick's saying, which I think is what any credible bike needs to have behind it. It's just telling you how to set this up. So. Yeah.
Like I had a look at. There is someone that was at a local race with a full BYB setup. Will from Will Ride. I don't know if you know him, but
I love Will,
if anyone's going to have a BYB setup, it's him because he knows every rock on every track down to a pebble. But that amount of data that you get from that is mind-boggling. Like it is next level.
Yeah. And the reading it's now, that's what I've spoken to Aaron about. Like everyone's caught up on telemetry, which is awesome, but you need to learn to read it for quite some time. And then you need a wealth of knowledge and info with it. Like you look at Loic's bike now and everyone's like, oh, we need telemetry. He was on Lachy with that when he was a junior. Like the knowledge they have from that is huge. And I think that's more like those telemetry, or not telemetry, the data logging stuff's not telling you how the bike should work. It's just showing you what the bike is doing. And interpreting that is the biggest part. Like, so that's why I get a bit worried and scared when people want to go buy those kits just for home.
It's so true. Like, the knowledge is only ever as good as what you understand. And I think that certainly there would be some information overload going on for a lot of people there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I actually had a look at Aaron's screen. Didn't understand any of it. He didn't show it to me or explain anything. But like just looking at the screen at Bright last year just sent me into overload. Like the amount of data he had. Like if you tried to analyze every single thing, you'd be there for a million years. Like it'd be pointless.
It'd be like a power meter, man. Like, and I don't use it, so I don't know, but it's like a power meter is such a personal thing. So I'm sure with Troy and Aaron, there's attributes of the ride that they want the bike to do at certain points. And they can see that, whether it be, how the wheels, I suppose, tracking or moving under braking and that kind of stuff. And that would be personal for Troy. I don't think it's something you could just say for everyone as a blanket rule, this works in this way, because the person
100%.
is dynamic, and they're the majority of weight on the bike. You know what I mean? So
for sure, 100%. And I think just as much so, like when you were talking about car racing and whatever before, Lachy, particularly when the majority of the weight and the dynamic weight on sort of the bicycle as a net system, like rider and bike, the majority of the weight is the rider. It's not like with car racing, you tune the car because you're only adding a person to a tiny percentage of that net system, where, it's going to depend so much on the different rider.
Yeah, that's where I love like Geordie, and obviously Fox is the opposite to us, but like, and I'm the same thing with like flexibility is a big thing and stretching before a ride, but you constantly see him on dial talking about bringing the bars up, and it's like, well, the suspension and the body position are completely different to one another, and if you're trying to get the suspension to compensate for a body position thing, it's not going to run right. And that's where I think if you get into the telemetry thing of like, it needs to do this, it's just a rabbit hole that may come down to geometry. I don't know.
100%.
Yep.
Like before I do I actually got the bars today, which is sick, but
I saw that, yeah.
Before I do anything with my suspension, I'm running pretty much every bar stem height combo I possibly can on my bike to not only see what the body position is like, but to know if the stem height, so the bar height in relation to your stem or to the bars is different. So if I have a 10 mil rise bar and then a 30 mil rise bar, but they're at the exact same height, if there's any difference there due to reach.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because I can read everything on the internet, but I get bored of reading. So I can just go and do it. And thanks to KWT for sending me those bars. Might as well thank them. But it is amazing. Like, I just want to see what those body geometry things are like because, Geordie Cortez, the legend, my spirit animal, is always on about that.
Yeah.
And obviously you'd know a little bit about that, WRP stems. And
well, I know.
But
I'm not going to argue as to what's best or what I know. I know what a lot of people want to ride. Put it that way. Like I get a lot of stemming, like more than I can keep up with at the moment. But I certainly see what a lot of people want to ride, and man, it differs a lot. Like a lot. Like I only got hit up the other day. Well, I got hit up a few months ago, so I'm currently doing one already, and I never thought I'd get asked again, but I'm getting asked. I've been asked a couple times now for like a zero reach stem, like one that mounts right to the top of the steerer.
Full G.
Like I wouldn't, like personally, I wouldn't run it. Like I'm a 50 mil guy. It's just because all I've ran is 50 mil. I'm really intrigued to run Lachy's setup of 46 and try it because I think there's some clout.
44.
Or 44, sorry. Yeah. I think there's some clout potentially to it. But yeah, I mean, I get hit up for like a 60 mil reach stem, and then the same day I'll get hit up for a 0 mil reach. So there's certainly like a lot of theories out there, and largely it comes down to what you're riding and how you ride too. I mean, a cross country stem man has like a 0 rise, like it droops down because you're so far over the front. So I think it depends. Like a lot of my friends that, and I'm the same way, I guess, that have had a BMX background seem to like longer stems. Like I'm like I say, like 50 mil guy, and I think the reason why, and again this is just speculating, but I think the reason why is because BMX, like you're always digging, like you're over the front, like strong arms, shoulder, and you're used to having weight on the front wheel. I think that feels natural. Like anything shorter than that, or anything too short, like a 35-40, feels washy. It doesn't feel like you got weight on the front wheel, and it's not complementing your style. Because like I know for me and a lot of my BMX friends, like we're very kind of sort of over the front, kind of almost leaning on our forearms, which complements that more forward body position. Whereas say like a lot of moto guys that transition over like just swinging off the back of it, and a lot of those guys seem to be wanting like 30 mil stems, like short ass stuff. So yeah, I think it depends so much. Like I was saying, I get hit up for all different types of geos.
For sure.
But the big one, like in regards to you talking about rides and whatever, haven't really thought about it too much, so I don't want to say anything sort of stupid, but it seems to be what most people like. And like when I think about it, this is what I seem to like too. It's like pretty well like a 0 mil or like 0 degree or 0 mil rise stem, but with rise in the bars. Like my current setup is like 30 mil rise bar, actually like -2 stem, because I'm running one of mine that I designed for Dave Habich. So that's a +2, -2. So depending on which way you flip it, it's got like 2 mil rise or 2 mil drop. So I run 2 mil drop, 30 mil rise in the bar, and that feels pretty good to me. But
yeah, the rise in the stem's weird. I'm the same. Like, so I've been a 50 guy for a long time now, and I'd have a 40 on the trance. It just seems to work. When I went to the acid guy, I just couldn't deal with the longer stem. Weird thing that I won't get into, but yeah, the rise I got on the stem is +6, and it just screws in my head a little bit. Like, it just doesn't look right, and then it kind of changes the way the bars sit. Like, whereas I normally run a 38 bar rise, it's changing that, you know what I mean? So I have to change my spaces. Like, I like that stem being there, the amount of spaces being that, and then I can just change my bars on top. So
for sure,
yeah,
38 mil, that's tall.
So with the stem thing too, I was gonna say, like, stem's the same as, you know, saying to Mick, I feel it's the same as suspension. It's like, what's the perfect stem? It's like, what's the perfect setup? It's like, well, what are you feeling? It's the same thing with the stem, you know what I mean? But yeah, so I run a high rise bar. I have really shit flexibility in my ankles. And because I have shit flexibility in my ankles, I can't get my weight off the back of the bike enough. And I'm very frontward heavy. So if my bars are too low, I just go over the bars all the time. So I found with the higher bars, I can position back a little bit better and have that central mass less weighted on the front wheel.
The other thing you got to remember too, and this is what I've always thought by having the rise in the bar, is that the more rise it's like, obviously you don't want to go dramatic, but the more rise it's in the bar, the more effect that bar roll is going to have on your ergo. So if you've got like, just like a set of bull bars, like straight, no rise bars, obviously the roll doesn't matter where it is. Like, if it's 180 upside down, it's still going to feel the same. Whereas, say, like a 30 mil rise or a 38 mil rise bar, if you change that only by a degree, like, it's going to have a dramatic effect. So for me, I've always liked a higher bar just because I can fine tune the riding position just with bar roll.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And with the number mix, so say you've got a riser stem. So my stem at the moment is a 6 mil at a 40.
40 length, 6 rise.
Yeah, so is that effectively a shorter stem from the way it's being ridden because it's up?
Yes, slightly.
Yeah.
Depends
on
how the stem company measures it.
It does.
Because there are some stems that may or may not have a number and a letter in them that measure it one way. Like, I think a lot of Euros measure it from the center to the center point of the bar. So it's 100 mils there, but it ends up actually being a 90. Like, it can be like 5 mils shorter. Yeah, okay. Because they haven't measured it horizontally, whereas some measure it horizontally and then add the drop. Yeah. So it actually ends up being like a 105.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like in the conventional sort of, conventionally speaking, like when I design a stem, like from the middle of steerer to the middle of the bar, so it's like 40 mil, and then at a right angle to that is your rise. Yes, effectively, like if you've got, just say, like a 10 mil rise, because it's going to be coming back to you at the angle of your head angle, effectively, yes, your reach is getting less.
Yeah, so that's what wigs me out with the rise. That's why I like zero rise.
Same here. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we'll jump on geometry and stuff for the next one for sure, and include this because it was kind of something we're going to discuss a little bit with Cannondale versus Norco and stuff, but I think we could do a whole nother episode just on geo and how that affects you.
Yeah, ergo is a big good one.
And that not everyone needs a 62-degree head angle. And
not everyone needs a 500 mil reach either. Reach is getting too long.
Hopefully the guys at work listen to this, but yeah, Triffin and Hayden have been having many discussion about Triffin's extra large Kona with reach. And I looked at the number today and I was like, whoa.
Was it like 520?
525, I think it was.
That's big.
He's tall. He's taller than me. I'm short. But I was like, whoa. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like my front tire and rear tire to be on the same jump, like at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't want my front tire landing while my rear tire is still taking off.
It's so funny how people go down like the whole longer bike thing. It's like, if anything, guys at the top level are coming back.
Well,
if anything.
So I did this last year with my Rain, and I never thought it was a good rate bike. It's not hanging the bike, but I was like, the size is perfect. I just can't corner. I'm just terrible at cornering, which I'm not great at cornering, so I just was that. So I had the Rain at Medina as a large. I was on a large 27, but the geometry changed. And then I took the Trance down, and I rode everything way quicker than when I was there on the Rain, and I could corner. And I was like, I can ride again. And it's just because I did this stupid, I need a bigger size because I'm a racer. I'm not a racer.
The big thing with that Rain, though, and I know we said we wouldn't go down the geometry right now, but I think there was 35 mil different between a medium and a large Rain.
And I was in between.
Yeah, because I rode a large, and then I looked at a medium, and it was just it was almost 2 sizes down. So,
and that's the other thing you got to take. And again, we'll kind of cut a bit of this short, but back to the original point about a high pivot, that's the other thing you got to remember with a high pivot is because your wheelbase is lengthening and both wheels are moving backwards, so your body weight, your center of mass, is effectively going forward. Is that it's real funny because you can get away with having a slightly shorter bike than what you otherwise might think because the wheelbase is effectively growing. Yeah. So it's getting more stable as it gets into its suspension travel. So it's not so critical to have a long bike for stability because it's going to get stability just by nature of going through its travel.
Exactly. Yeah. That one in a good roundabout. But yeah, Geo for sure. Next one. Went down some hot or not type things. Just some quick answers here. I just like these type of quick things. Tyre inserts. What are your thoughts, Lachy?
Hate them. Just put a downhill casing tyre on and get a suitable rim.
Can you be more definitive on that answer, please? I just think
I'll shine a little bit of light, I guess. I'm kind of, I hate sort of being agnostic about things, but I'm a little bit agnostic about this one because I tend to agree with Lachy. I have run straight tubeless for a long while now on everything, but I just run DH casing on everything, and I haven't had any. And DH casing and good rims.
Yes.
Personally, I'm a EX471 DT Swiss guy. I've just never blown up a set of rims, and I've never ripped a bead off a rim either. I am testing a tyre insert that Dave Habich has made, the Fire tyre. And the reason I'm running it is because he's going on about it so much, but it's legitimately light. It's legitimately light and got good volume. So I'm going to test it and give it a good run because it's the first thing that I've thought that I would actually be happy running because I feel you're Lachy, Kushka or whatever, it's heavy shit.
It's heavy, yeah.
It is very track dependent, of course. There are some tracks where you would struggle to ride tubeless and anxiety free about not flatting, some real, say Mont Saint Anne or something, riding that at race pace. Yeah, you'd have a bit of anxiety on tubeless, perhaps depending on your level. But I think it's it's so dependent. I would never run tubeless on I tried it. That's what I'm saying. I tried to run tubeless on my dirt jumper, Love it on the front. I still run it on the front, but the back was just a dumb idea. Like, just ripped it off.
60.
Because I'll even go to the point in saying, like, I've ridden Dream Track at New Zealand a couple of times at Queenstown. The last time I rode it was tubeless front and back, and I'll never do it again. It was fucking scary. Like, there's a video of, because I was running like legit like 50 PSI in the rear, and there's a video on Instagram, and if you look closely, I was trying to keep it as straight as I could up the lip, and you can see it like squirming and kind of like scrubbing off the lip just because of the tyre roll. Because like the rumour is at Fest Series and whatever, those guys drill another hole in the opposing side of the rim for a second valve and run 2 tubes
For the balance.
Yeah, for the balance, and in fact you got 2 downhill casing tubes in there. So it depends so much on what you're doing, I think. But like, I think inserts. Like I was saying, I'm a little bit agnostic about it, so apologies. But my current setup is just tubeless front and back.
Yeah. I've been spoiled, so I was on the testing program for those Zip wheels for like 2 years before they came out.
Right. Yeah.
But this is, it's going to sound like I'm taking the piss, but I haven't cut a tire since I've been on those, and that's been 4 or 5 years. Like, I don't even know why I carry a tube anymore. And I have changed casings for stiffness feelings. I had XOs and I've gone up to double down and XO plus. But you can't run those for downhill too, and I don't ride downhill really, you know what I mean? So I think there definitely might be places for them, but yeah, I just see people running lightweight rims and lightweight tires and then running Cuticle, and I think it just defeats the purpose. But
yeah, I agree on that point totally. Yeah.
My favorite insert is Air. The rims for sure. Like, there is a company of rims, and if anyone follows my personal Instagram, they would have seen this. But I went through 8 tires in 3 months.
Yeah, right.
All of them were cut at the bead. Like, every single one. 35 PSI in the rear, downhill casing, sliced it. Yeah. I had a 15 centimeter cut on one tire at the bead where it was rubbing through because they didn't make the rim bed. The rim, like the bead width, almost like where the rim is sharp. It was 2
like
mils
at the seat there.
Yeah, where it like seats up. It was like 2 mils. I'm not kidding. It was basically a knife. But then you look at DT, Zip do it. The guys at Noble actually do it for a rear. They made them like 4 to 5 mils, and you don't pinch flat as much because it's like a blunt knife. Yeah, it makes sense.
The other thing too, that like on that same point, like what Lachy was saying as well, like DH casing obviously, and then there's a big difference between wire bead and folding bead too.
Yeah,
huge difference. And then to go into another thing too is like I've noticed with Maxxis, and not meaning to shit on Maxxis at all, but there's a really big sort of diversity in tire dimensions too. Like, I've got tires that have been so difficult to get on, and then I've got other tires that are exactly the same model, bead, whatever, and they go on real floppy, and it's like only say a millimeter in dimension, like in diameter difference, will be so easy to get on versus off. Like I put a downhill tire on a while ago, it's like a year ago, and it like Maxxis DHR2, and it was so hard to get on. I'm like, right, that thing is never coming off. Like, I could run 15 PSI and shroud the shit out of stuff, and that thing is not coming off. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. And if you another point too, I guess, is without trying to go down a rabbit hole sort of too much, is that there are factory teams that glue tires on as well, which I think that that's actually a pretty smart idea. If you can afford to glue tires to rims, it's like it's a one run shit.
Tubeless. Yes, let's do it.
But it is a good way to poach if you're willing to get in there with a little scalpel and whatever. It is a good way at World Cups and whatever to poach rims, is to find a team that glues tyres to rims because they have no other way but to cuddle spokes. And you can poach some very good rims.
Yeah.
And send them back home to your mum and dad from Switzerland and score 10 free EX471s.
Yeah, that's a good note to end that one on. I'm going to skip one here, but
yeah, they're not coming off in a hurry.
I want to go with another one that had both of you on the opposite scales, but electronically controlled suspension. So we've seen live valve. It's out the back. I've actually got a Lapierre with their old EI. It's out the back. Yeah, I know why you're shaking your head. This one works still. It's the one. Don't touch it. I said no.
You can go first, Nick, because I started the last one off.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a mechanical boy at heart. Like I don't know. I love old cars and Harleys and shit. So I just love mechanical stuff. So when electronics mix, like I'm a fan of it. I reckon it's cool. But yeah, I'm just a mechanical guy at heart.
Mm.
I'm all about it, man. Like it's when I changed about shifting on my road bike originally, like it was the bomb. And I think suspension will be the same thing. I think it'd be good, and I think it'll be good for the masses as well. I think it'll be something that will allow people to ride better. I think, I'm just a big fan. I like having those controls, and I like tinkering and stuff. And yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. Yeah.
I could go either way, but I'm keen to see what the SRAM electronic system looks like. There was a very, very small hint about it 2 years ago, and if anyone saw it, there was,
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Yeah. It's because not many people I know saw it because they don't follow XC. That's all I'm going to say. But I'm very excited to see what happens. But
I think your point was good, Lachy, as far as it will help people get on a good setup.
Yeah.
Because I think the reason why I say I like mechanical, I'm a mechanical guy, is mainly because I don't really understand electronics. And like, I'm one of these people that like needs to understand, like not just bikes, but I just like to understand the shit that I have. And because I don't understand electronics, I'm just a mechanical guy at heart. I'll be like, know how to fix it or make it or whatever. But putting my own biases aside, I think that it is a really good thing for people being on a good setup.
Yeah.
One quick one, like real quick, and then we'll go on to some listener questions. Otherwise, it's going to be a 4-hour podcast. C3PO's signature bike, the Pole Voima. You guys like that?
Next question.
Yeah. I'm just not into poles. Like, there are people, I think they're polarizing. People love them or hate them. And I just don't like the look of them, and I don't see their purpose. Yeah. That's what
I'll say they're cool from a manufacturing point of view. I reckon, like, I respect it. They're cool. But personally, I wouldn't buy one.
Yeah. Agreed. Not a fan of riding pole. We have a few people here with them, and they cop it everywhere. But I can't deal with that.
I bet you they never heard that joke before either.
Oh, mate, every time they're on the ride, every time I see them, just have to do it.
That's the first time I ever heard it. Yeah.
Oh, my
Really?
God.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know anyone who rides a pole.
Yeah. Getting rowdy, they're pole dancing. It's all good. There's so many jokes, man. Like, it's next level. So we had some listener questions here as well. I'm going to skip that first one. This is from Howie Clark, and I had to get it answered because it's Howie. We all love Howie. What is the worst bag practice in a workshop? So,
you can go, mate. I kicked off the last one.
I had a lot when I saw this. I was going to make fun at something that Howie not has done, but has fixed at the shop he's at, but I'm not going to do that. But it would be...
is that his current shop or the one he was at?
Well, he fixed the thing at the current shop. That's all I'm going to say. But my most hated thing is people spraying out and this is dot focus brakes because I work with dot brakes, spraying calipers with anything, like anything that's not isopropyl water. It's just, no, I hate it. And it just wrecks brakes and it's not good,
And Mick, you're
cool. Yeah, I guess I'm not a workshop guy. Like I've never worked as a mechanic in a bike shop type thing, but just from a larger point of view, like any workshop, whether it be car, motorbike, bike, whatever, is just cleanliness. Like I just hate walking into anywhere and it just being real unclean. And I'll say that like I'm not the best at keeping clean, and I know how much of a difference it makes when my own workshop's clean. It makes life so much easier. So,
See, I hate clean workshops. I'm controversial. I like semi-messy, like old school garage setups, but that's...
and can't find any of your shit anywhere.
No, but I know where everything is.
See, when I'm doing stuff, I'm messy. So like there'll be, like, if I have a tool wrap at an event, you've probably said, Darren, my shit's everywhere. But I'll clean it up after every job. I think it's important so you don't forget to put shit back on the bike.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm coming at it from as well, is like I'm not that good at keeping stuff clean, but it makes such a difference to me when it is, that I think that's like the biggest practice that I always reinforce myself.
I'm going to say the worst bad practice I've seen in the workshop has nothing to do with the workshop or the tools. It's the people and being arrogant and neglecting base level bikes or kids bikes.
Or ripping people off big time.
Yeah.
That's got to be up there, because I've seen so many people come in to certain bike shops, like none of the good mountain biking shops that I know of do it, but some of the inner city bike shops I have certainly seen rip some people off.
Yeah,
it's not good.
I think they're neglecting things big. Like, don't get me wrong, I probably wouldn't go back into a shop and want to service kids' bikes, but I do get what you mean. Like, you got to give them time of day. But that being said, too, like young mechanics, like that's your bread and butter for like a good few years. Like, if you can service up a Trek MT220 and make it run schmick, you can build an awesome road bike. You know what I mean? Like, so you need to. I think people need to do that, and I think you're right. I think people neglect that and get too stuck on these fancy builds. Like, you need to get like a 6-speed grip shift setup going mint. You know what I mean? Like,
and then you can work on opinion.
100%.
Grip shift.
Maybe not opinion, but like, like if you can make that bike work, high-end bikes are easy.
No, I just made the drew the comparison grip shift. with the grip shift. Oh
yeah.
God.
Yeah, like, and if you've ever had a kid's bike, I've seen it happen to somewhere else where their brakes failed and the parent came in. You will never ever fuck up a kid's bike again, like, because you're dead. Like, So
brakes are for me, brakes scare me for that reason. Like, it's one of the few things that's a very big safety thing. You know what I mean?
hate working on brakes. I hate it, like, with a passion.
I love it, but scary.
No, just because they're scary. Like, they're easy, but they're just scary. Second one from Harry Clark, because it was a 2-part question. What's your favorite tool?
I would say isopropyl.
Because you drank it, or because you just...
It's a different type of alcohol to what you can drink,
Oh, shit.
These are mine. The Jesus pliers. I don't know. They're just... You do everything with them. I don't know if this will be on video in the end, but they're the Nipex 180 mil parallel pliers, and they are the best thing in the world.
No, I'd have to, like, it'd be hard to, legitimately though, it would be hard to go past a good set of Allen keys, because, like, I could literally pull down, 90+% of like my bikes with just Allen keys.
Yeah.
So it's hard to go past a good set.
Good Allen keys are, like, I bought a set of Silkers when I was in Sydney, so that would now be 5 years ago. They're Silker T-bars.
T-bars, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they have been amazing, man. So I've broken one T25, which got warranted straight away. And that was it. Like, they're awesome. So, like, good. I think, if there wasn't a favorite tool, it'd just be quality tools. But,
But there's nothing worse than an Allen key that doesn't have a ball end.
I hate ball ends.
Do you?
Oh, yes.
Similar, yeah.
Well,
Sniffer
one
ball.
that's a ball end, and the other one's just flat end.
No, I can't do them, mate.
Oh, really?
Round shit out. Like bad bolts, they'll just ruin them like every day of the week.
Yeah.
I have a random tool that I love because it was free/stolen from my girlfriend's makeup box. It's like these cuticle sniffers.
Ooh.
And they're a 45-degree angle, dead sharp blade, like amazing. And they'll cut nails, so they cut zip ties dead flush every time. They weigh like
some of those for sure.
They're $3 and they weigh nothing.
Right,
Yeah, right.
down right
From
now.
Pharmacy Online or something.
Yeah, they're just cuticle cutters or something. And they cut everything like bar tape. If they're big enough, they'll cut the electrical tape like dead straight. And just trimming down like little like feathers and stuff. Like they're just good.
Yeah, there is nothing worse than a zip tie that's not flush.
Oh man, I taught that.
I've cut many a zip tie that's not flush too.
Yeah, I taught a stew where we had a live stew. We had a bunch of female mechanics, which was one of the best things we've ever done. But part of that was showing everyone to cut zip ties flush. It's such a thing that people don't do, and they kill you. Like they fuck you up, man.
It's death by 1,000 blades.
Yeah,
just you walking around the back. Yeah,
I'm getting some of those, man. Those look good.
Just something small.
Maybe you could give it a recommendation to Nipex that they make a set.
They probably do.
But then they're going to be like,
yeah,
exactly. Probably. These are $3, and if I forget them, I go down to my servo or something or the pharmacy and I get new ones. Whereas Nipex, I can't afford that. I've got to pay retail now. This was the big question that I think this is probably the best question that we got, and this is why Lachy's been holding his shaft this whole time.
I got to touch stuff, eh?
Yeah, I know. I'm saying, what differs in our RockShox spring styles over the range of updates?
Cool.
This is a big one for Lachy.
So I realized when I got home, I forgot to bring all of my props. So I kind of made one, and then I don't have the original one, but we can imagine. But I've got two of the most recent air assemblies from RockShox. Both of these are for Pike. Having a brain space. It's either a Pike or a Lyric. It's irrelevant either way. The original one is probably like 4 or 5 years old now, so you probably don't see a lot of them. But these were the ones that had like the massive upgrades. So they're both of them there. They are actually the same. For the same travel, these aren't the same travel. These are the ones I just had at home, but they are actually the same shaft length. What changes is the internals. But so when it came out with the original Debonair, which is what everyone went gangbusters for in the upgrade, and it came on the lyrics that were red, was the negative spring increase. So before, your negative spring was just between these two seals. And on the older air assemblies, this was quite small, and they made it just like a little bit bigger in terms of space. And that was kind of all they could do, because once it crosses the dimple inside the fork, it can't be any bigger. If it's sitting over the dimple, which is what puts air in the negative spring, it won't be able to equalize. So there's only a finite amount of space that this can physically be from seal to seal. So what they did with the original Debonair was they introduced this foot nut, and then underneath the piston head up here, it's actually hollowed out. So the air would go into the shaft of the air assembly. So this like doubled the negative air volume. What that does on your air spring curve, if I had a whiteboard, I do have a whiteboard, but it'd be too hard to get out. What that does is on an air spring, you kind of have zero breakaway when you have a negative spring, but it kind of ramps up a little bit at the start and then flattens. So the larger the negative, the smoother that line is. So it gets it closer to coil, which is what you want. And that's why a lot of older air springs, like they felt soft off the top, but they kind of felt a bit crap in the travel. And it was just that little ramp up. So that increased the negative space tremendously. But these air assemblies were the way they top out, which is when you get to your max amount of travel, is these would pneumatically top out. So when the air moved in, the air would fill up between the two seals and it would actually push back and it wouldn't actually hit the top out bumper on these. So they were really soft, but what people were finding is they could dive a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And it's because the way it ramped up when you pushed into the travel kind of put more air into this and sat you in the travel more. I was actually personally a big fan of this. It was really nice and smooth, but some people found it dived a little bit. So what they did was create the Debonair C1, which has just changed where the seals sit in relationship to the dimple. So this one sits pretty much straight on the dimple and equalizes straight away. So there's no pneumatic top out. It'll physically top out on the bumper. But the lower seal head and the lower foot nut have gotten bigger to allow for that space. So this is the same as that increase from this to this. And effectively, they'll sit in the fork at the same height. This one will just top out on the bumper. This one will pneumatically top out, but it'll just change this where the spring works. So in essence, these are the same, and all that actually changes is the seal head. So you can buy just a seal head and just the foot nut if you want it to sit up a little bit higher in its travel. But that's pretty much all you're doing with all the new airspring stuff. You're just putting more negative air in them. So, and your negative air, for people who don't, it's a rabbit hole we could talk about it for half an hour, but the best way I find to talk about negative spring is it's like having a spotter at the gym. It just helps you, say someone's doing a bench press, it helps you get into the movement more. So it allows there to be no breakaway and allows the first part of the travel to be nice and smooth.
So I'm against calling that an upgrade. I'm more of calling it a tunable part or something. It's like spacers, right? Like if you want, you can run either one. I feel like Sham calling it an upgrade was a little bit misleading.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the only way you could say that it is.
Yeah, okay.
Just because like that one's now the norm and that one isn't. But I was the same. Like I wouldn't say that this was a downgrade. Like I actually quite like this. I prefer this, but I didn't think that this had issues. And honestly, I didn't know many people who did. The only issues I heard from people was they'd freak out because the fork would sit in its travel like about 5%. And everyone's like, I'm losing travel. And it's like, well, no, because when you de-weight the bike, you're going to full travel. But it's sagging under its own weight, which isn't a bad thing. So you're not losing travel. That was kind of the only complaint I heard. But, I wouldn't say that the new ones... I wouldn't say the old one's a downgrade. I wouldn't say necessarily the new one is an upgrade, but it will make your fork feel different.
Yeah. On negative volume, how much grease do you reckon it would take to actually affect the negative volume? Just because there's a lot of chatter about that on the internet.
Yeah.
Some people.
I see some pretty bad ones. For sure. Like, so the tube in here is a fair amount of space for sure, but the main part of the spring's up here, right? So you've got grease sitting here, like that's probably 20% of your negative volume gone. You know what I mean? And that grease isn't doing anything there. You know what I mean? Like that's not helping anything move around. It's like I've heard things where it's like the grease migrates where it's going to make it smoother, and it's not really the case. On these now, you just run dynamic seal on the top, and then you actually coat the tube of the CSU with dynamic seal grease, and then you put 0W30 in the tube as well. That will allow this to maintain how smooth it is. And that's probably why Mick, as was saying before the podcast, your box is feeling good because it has that up top. But yeah, you don't want anything in here. Like just put it on the seal. That's the only bit that's moving, and leave this thing nice and clean.
Yeah. Sick. Cool. Did you learn something from that one, Mick? No way. Boxer feels amazing.
That's it, mate. Yeah, like I said earlier, like mechanical engineer type guy, but yeah, I'm not going to jump in and say I understand the internals of suspension. What is he, dude?
Now it's just the internals of marketing, though. He's going to lose all that knowledge and
straight out the window. Yeah.
Right. So that was Charlie Petrel. So I believe he is one of the guys from
YBC boy. He's
Petrel Media.
Yeah.
Petrol media. Petrol or petrol?
Petrol, I think it is. I think he's done a bit of spin on word there. I think it's Petrol Media. Hang on, I'll look him up.
I do. He does take a good photo and does do a very good edit. That Cooper edit he did recently was sick.
Yeah, that was pretty rad. He's doing cool things. And I need to confirm this, so I might edit this out. But I'm pretty sure he's going to get something from Pedro's Tools and the guys at Lead Out Sports because they come on board. So Pat wanted to come on and sponsor this, and we think giving some cool prizes to people asking good questions. So
I love Pat. Pat is
he might have renamed it. I think it was Petrol Productions or something at the beginning. Now it's Charlie Petrol Productions.
Yeah, okay.
There we go. CPP. Go have a look at his stuff because he's killing it.
Yeah, he's a very good photographer. He took a really good photo of the FR stem too. And actually the stem I did for Luke Parker, that integrated gyro tab one, he took some really good stuff of that too. So I owe him.
There we go. He's a good dude.
Young lad. Yeah.
He, interestingly enough, I think he's one of the only people that actually manages just like a social media for a store. Other than Neville Jemison, I can't think of anyone else that's like dedicated social media.
Neither. I'm sure they do exist, but both those dudes do it well, man. That's where it's going, dude. Like, you need more of that. Like, that's your marketing outlet, and those guys kill it. So,
yeah, we're just I was having a discussion with someone today about how much social media has grown. Like, it's almost hard to look at it in hindsight and not believe that only a couple of years ago it wasn't how it is now.
Yeah, man. Like it's unbelievable. A full-time job with planning. Like, like being super lucky to kind of hear some of the talk and shine from some of the overseas teams. It's amazing, dude. And to think 10 years ago when I was faffing around on Instagram, copping hate from people for wasting time on my phone, you know what I mean? Like, it's actually a thing, you know what I mean? Like, and obviously you can waste your time on it, but I think it's awesome. Yeah, like it can be a double-edged sword for some people, but I think if you look at it and don't actually take it too seriously, I think it's awesome. So.
The other thing that I've noticed this year, I don't know if you guys agree, but I think from the World Cup and the EWS S's this year, compared to years gone by, there is so much content coming out. Like, it's unreal. Like, and particularly from sort of satellite teams too. Yeah. Like the factory teams, obviously, like they employ their own photographers and mainly kind of videographers and that. But mainly from the satellite team guys, they're documenting everything, even if it's just like posting stories and whatever. But I'm into the like privateer type stuff, so I follow a lot of the satellite teams, and there's so much on there. Like, and in years gone by, it was like, other than the factory guys, you didn't see really any coverage of the races. Like, I've been in a couple of myself. It's like it didn't happen. Like, unless you were there, it didn't really happen. But yeah, there's so much coming out. It's unreal.
I think that's where a lot of teams will be able to actually grow. Like, if you're not getting results before, you never grew, unless you were like growing riders and being that team. Now there's a value that they have, which is beyond results. You know what I mean? I think it's good for everyone, really. It's just hard if you're complacent. That's all.
Even if you look at like the suspension companies, everyone knows who Geordie Cortez is. Yeah. No one could tell me any of the guys on RockShox.
For sure. I've noticed that SR Sun Tour have really picked up their social media stuff as well. So we've got a couple of satellite teams on them, and maybe it's just speculating because I follow them, but there just seems to be so much around those, the guys that aren't the big players is, I guess, what I'm saying, which is really cool to see because a lot of people in days gone by really haven't seen the content from the races from anyone but Fox, Trek, guys like that. So
I think it's awesome. I think if there can be more money getting into the sport or just more stories, I think that's awesome. You know what I mean? And it's the same for bike shops. If you can sell more product because you're putting up photos of mad bikes, like that's all power to you.
It really does for a lot of, I guess, it kind of tells the narrative of the week of the World Cup. rather than just like the weekend of finals. Like it's really like if you wanted to, you could go on one of these teams' kind of Instagram and follow it along and pretty well follow the whole narrative of the week leading up, like them setting up the pits, all that type of stuff. And whether it's good or bad, sometimes it might be a little bit of information overload, but it's certainly come a long way.
I think it's good. Like if you think about the Geordie thing as an example, right? Like when has it been cool to know more about the mechanics in the race team? Like unless they were the winning mechanic, you wouldn't hear a lot. You might see a bit from Marshy and stuff, but it's like those dudes are rad. Like, and people want to hear that. They want more of a story, as Mick's saying. They want to see the pit set up and they want to see who's running it, you know, like it's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, particularly like for guys like Geordie and whatever is like, I remember it being like such a huge difference between like what you saw on TV and actually being there. It was like there was just no comparison. And I mean, a lot of sports like that, but like I guess you just saw like, you know, Loic or Troy or whatever on Red Bull TV. But, you know, if you're actually there, it's like, I don't know, Geordie's helping out like the privateers and whatever with their Fox stuff. And it's like if more people can see that narrative of it, then I think that's good.
For sure. I think like we'll start wrapping up in a minute, but like I'd be interested to see how many views Aaron Peltari's bike check on Troy's bike got, because that was so good.
I was about to say that, like that. I know Aaron personally, and I think he's a mad dog regardless. But that video was so good. Like it just showed Aaron as who he was. That's how he is, and he's sassy. But it's true, and I think that would have blown a lot of people's minds with bike setup. But he's such a down-to-earth person. I also hope people start to look at their bike setup and like, well, actually, maybe it's not all the crazy stuff I'm seeing. Maybe that is, you know, goes down to it. Like you look at Troy and he's on the right size bike. He, you know, there's nothing too crazy. He's running a big rotor on the back. Like there's some crazy stuff on there, but it all makes sense. You know what I mean? It's not just traditional ways of doing stuff like it's been for the last few years.
For sure. And I think that was kind of cool. And that kind of ties into the whole thing with seeing more of like the World Cup than just sort of race winning stuff. Is something that I've really liked to see is like obviously that behind the scenes, the pit setup, that type of stuff, but really telling the stories of the mechanics too. Like I follow the majority of mechanics because I think it's so cool to see sort of the behind the scenes. And for a lot of those guys doing really well, so much of that effort is the mechanic.
Yeah.
And I think Troy would say the same, like without Aaron, you know.
Yeah. Like it's a team, yeah. When I was overseas wrenching, like I learned so much from those dudes. Like, you know, I got to speak with Marshy and Monk and stuff when they were there, and just the little interactions I had, crazy the amount of stuff I learned. You know what I mean? And I feel that's only going to be better if that can get told to more people. Like, you know, and stuff I've learned from Nige and stuff. Like I wouldn't be the person I am today without learning those little tidbits. You know what I mean? Like little things. So. I want to hear that story more because I think like they've seen it, like they've dealt with multiple races, they've been in the scene for 10 plus years. Like they have a more wealth of knowledge and a deeper story, I think.
For sure, I'm definitely keen to see more of that stuff. And Aaron is amazing on a bike to watch. It is so entertaining.
I've always had this thing. Pink Bike, if you're listening. No,
Brian Park might actually be listening, but yes.
No joke. Do you think this would be the best event ever? Is if you held like at like the final World Cup or whatever.
Oh,
the rider and the mechanic both did a run, and the combined times like for an unofficial race, like you and your mechanic have to do a run, and it's the combined time. Like Troy and Aaron would be have to be up there.
Yeah.
Eddie and Ben Fords.
Valley and Matt would be pretty up there too.
Who's that, sorry?
Valley and Matt. Like so.
Oh, yeah, Matt Gallen, yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name? Danny Hart and his mechanic, like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, like he's one of the VDS like champions.
For sure. There'd be a few, but the point being is like all the riders get mechanics that can ride. Yeah. And I actually think it would be a good race. Like I reckon it'd be sick. Yeah. Even if it was a Crankworks or something, like it'd be pretty cool.
They were doing an industry worlds for a while there. I remember.
Yeah, that was sick.
They need to bring that back for sure. Like, yeah.
Like, because they had the media worlds as well.
That was it, media worlds.
Yeah, with like Sven Martin and stuff. Yeah, and Sven smoked everyone. Yeah,
yeah, because he can shred. That one he did today at the Latuile, like he did a GoPro just.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, he's hooking I
haven't seen it yet. I want to look at that.
So good.
Yeah. For an old dude, he goes all right. But yeah, sick. Right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, guys. It's been fun.
It's all right. Thanks for thanks for putting that together and dragging me in.
Mic problems and ranting for 2 hours.
So thanks for coming up with the idea, Mick. It's good. Yeah.
Oh,
glad you brought it to.
Yeah, I think that's kind of set the narrative. You come up with the idea, you've got to. It's kind of like you build it, you write you build it, you write it type thing.
Yeah.
Come up with the idea, you got to come on.
If I could have found someone better, I would have. But no one's.
It's not going to take you long.
No.
Easy to find someone that doesn't take you down a rabbit hole. Put it that way.
No, it's the best. Love a good rabbit hole. It's full Alice in Wonderland. It's great. Yeah, sick. No, thank you so much. It's been fun. Hope we'll do one a month-ish if you guys are keen.
I'm always down, man.
Always keen for a yarn.
Yeah.
Sweet.
We should even do it at one place, one time, Lachy.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Congregate.
Yeah.
I would be down for sure.
Yeah, I probably won't jump over there because you guys will be in lockdown again.
I didn't ask you anyway.
I will go to you because I didn't realize where you lived until you had to come pick up that fork from me, and I felt so bad. So I'll go to you because I owe you. So.
He's in the sticks. He's almost here. It's probably it might actually be better just to meet his because I could probably drive there.
That's true.
Yeah.
I was in Melbourne. Like, I thought you were in Melbourne, Mick. And I was like, just come round. And then when you were like, oh, I don't know Melbourne either because I'm not from here. But then I was talking to, when you were there and Jess was there, she was like, whoa, that's really far away.
Oh, no, it was cool. Whatever. Well, I was in real desperate need for a set of forks too. So, no, it's all good.
I'll come to you and I check out the workshop. So.
Yeah. No worries. Take the Trinity for a ride.
Hopefully next time I'll have ridden my Cannondale. So
that'd be good because then we can talk geo. Yeah, do some weird stuff. Cool.
Sick.
Sweet.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night.
No worries, mate.
Yeah,
take care.
Cheers.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.